Welcome back to my sustainability journey. Today's video is a much asked question which I hope I'm going to shed some light on and give you some insights, and that is how often and how to water your garlic. Okay, so you've planted your garlic in autumn and they should all roughly look about the size by now. So now's the stage where you need to keep a very close eye on them because they started growing, the temperatures are changing, the weather's changing. There's a lot you need to keep your eye on to make sure that you don't overwater them and you don't underwater them. But in today's video, I'm going to just quickly show you very easy ways to make sure that you don't over or underwater and make sure they get that perfect amount of water they need to thrive. So before I actually show you how to check the water, I just want to quickly touch on a few things that impact how often you need to water your garlic. And that is the temperature. Obviously, the higher the temperature, the quicker the water loss within the soil. So the more regular you need to check your soil. Wind causes water evaporation from the soil very quickly. So if you have lots of windy days, you need to keep a very close eye on your soil. Daylight length is quite an important one that is quite easily overlooked. So obviously the longer the days, the longer the exposure to heat and sun, the more water loss there is. The shorter the days, obviously the reverse. So there's a lot more moisture that's retained within the beds. Another one is exposure to the sun. So if you have your garlic in direct sun the whole day, then obviously it's going to have substantially more water loss compared to 6-7 hours of sun during this winter period, which, you know, in summer you should be getting at least 12 to 13 hours of sunlight, but we do know that with winter the arcs of the sun change. So why do we need to keep a close eye on the watering with garlic? Firstly, it's a bulb, and as with any bulbs, be that flowers or vegetables, if a bulb sits in overly wet soil, it is going to rot. And it's no different with garlic. If your soil is too moist, your soil is not free draining, you are going to have rotten bulbs. Or your clove is not going to turn into a bulb. You can end up with tiny little garlics. On the flip side, we need to make sure that we don't underwater it, because garlic plants are heavy feeders, and in order for the garlic to absorb the nutrients in the soil, there needs to be an optimum amount of moisture in the ground. As soon as the moisture level drops too much, the garlic can't absorb the nutrients from the soil, which means your bulbs are going to be smaller at the end of the season. So now I'm going to show you how to test in a wooden raised bed. I'm going to show you in the ground and also in a big pot, so that we can grow garlic in a range of different conditions and you know how to treat all of them. When you water your garlic, there are two ways to test. First one is using a moisture reader. I would strongly suggest using this as your main way of testing if you have it. Otherwise, the good old finger always works as well. The single biggest piece of advice I can give you is to never water your garlic on a schedule. Watering your garlic on a schedule is the number one way to overwater your garlic. This garlic here hasn't been watered for 2 weeks. And when I show you the moisture readings, you're going to be surprised considering this hasn't been watered for 2 weeks. If I watered by schedule, like people say, water every 3 to 5 days, these would all have rotted by now. So let me show you and then we take it from there. Moisture reader is a pretty simple device. It literally just has dry on the one side, wet on the other, and you want to make sure it's not on that side and not on that side. So in the middle is fine. But in order to make sure that you use it correctly, you need to make sure you have it at the correct depth. Now if I show you the depth, remember we plant garlic plus another 3 times its height. So we're looking at 15 centimeters depth. Now if we measure that from the bottom, you're looking at about half the probe's depth. Skipping this crucial step is also a very easy way to not get accurate readings. So if we look at half the depth of the probe, we stick it in, So now that we have the probe in halfway, you can see the reading is halfway between wet and dry. And this is probably a really good time to water it. And it's also quite a good show as to the importance of the depth. If we raise this slightly and even to 2 times the depth of garlic and we stick it in, then you see it's reading dry, completely dry. And if you keep using that, you're going to overwater your garlic. You need to go in that extra depth of garlic and you can immediately see it goes to halfway. If we stick it in the whole way, you can see it's wet. But because the root zone is within that 15 centimeter range, we want to make sure that range never dries out. And that's why it's so important to have the correct growing medium, because you don't want waterlogged soil at the bottom, dry soil in the root zone, then you have huge inconsistencies. So that's using a probe. Now to use your finger, exactly the same principle. If we look at half the probe, around there, take your finger, it's about the depth of my finger. Now here you need to make sure you don't go too close to the garlic to disturb the roots. So I've planted mine in squares, so the middle is always an open space. So if I stick my finger in, I wiggle it down to the zone and I look. It's not completely wet and it's not dry. I would guess, as the moisture reader said, it's about halfway. And that would then tell me, okay, now is probably a good time to water. We have rain coming tomorrow, so I'm actually not going to water this specific one. I'm going to water the garlic in a pot, because that's not going to necessarily be exposed to the rain like this in the outdoor one. But let's have a look at the pot and the outdoor ground planted garlic, and then we compare the results. Okay, so going by exactly the same principles of using the water meter, we're going to stick it in between two pieces of garlic, stick it down half a probe deep. This one is actually reading completely wet, so we're not going to be watering this one as I suggested we should. But another tip with planting in garlic in pots is make sure you get a reading on the edge as well. And that reading is also pulling in wet, so that's fine. The reason why I say that is the center of the pot will always be more moist than the outside. Especially in a black pot, the outside will dry a lot quicker. So if we stick that in halfway, it's still reading wet. So we don't need to do anything with this one. So this is the garlic that's planted in a raised bed outdoors. It's a trial bed. You'll see there's no mulch on this one. I'm busy testing the effects of different mulches and no mulch and depths of mulch and all of that. So with this bed, my expectation is 100% that the first 5+ centimeters are going to be completely dry, and underneath that could be completely wet. But let's have a look. Okay, so as with the other ones, put the probe in between two, put it about halfway, and as I suspected, it's completely wet. Where if we go, we just move the soil, it's quite dry on the surface, but quite moist on the inside. This is a soil mix that we've used that isn't nearly as free draining as the others. So 2 weeks, no water, and you can see the soil is still dark, retaining a lot of moisture. So we need to be very, very careful with how we water these to not cause any issues. Okay, and finally, how to water your garlic. That's pretty simple. Garlic is an allium. Much like onions, they don't mind being watered overhead. There's one piece of advice if you are going to water overhead, and that is to keep a close eye on the garlic leaves. And what you're looking out for is rust or any other type of bacteria, disease, fungus that's growing on the leaves. And then with any other vegetable, don't water overhead because droplets can spread anything like that. So then just water in between, water the soil, but just don't water the leaves of the garlic if you see there's anything that's looking off on the leaves of your garlic. So in summary, 1. Do not water your garlic by schedule. 2. Use a moisture reader if possible, or your finger. 3. Make sure you are taking the reading at the correct depth. And fourthly, make sure you are checking environmental factors like wind, sun, season, all of those things to give you an indicator of how regularly to check the soil. And that's it. Get those things right and you're not going to have any issues growing your garlic. So if you enjoyed this video and it was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you've got any questions, please drop them below in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Please subscribe so that we can grow this community together and you can stay updated with everything I'm doing. And if there's anything I might have missed, please let me know and I'll definitely get back to you. Until then, stay safe everyone.